If you've caught any of the recent headlines, so much is happening with visas and immigration in America right now. Visa status durations are changing, new rules on where you can do your visa interviews, more stringent policies that are making it much harder to get visas, on and on and on. It's been a crazy month for visa and immigration. And so we're going to help you guys out. We want to break down what's happening, what are the rules, what are proposals, what are policies, when things are going to happen, how to be better prepared. We have a lot of fun stuff to get through today. But this is a live webinar. So welcome, guys. I'm Rob with Chine Coaching. At Chine Coaching, we're all about helping you thrive and succeed in your cross-cultural journeys. I was lucky to live and work in India for many years and have traveled all over the world. So I get what it's like trying to be an expat with visas and work and in other places. And we really want to help you guys out. We're doing this because of all the crazy things that have been happening and talking to the new students that are here, everything that they've had to get through to get here. It's a lot. And so we've got a great guest today who's helped many of you guys, our friend Lisa. Lisa, welcome, and go ahead and please introduce yourself.
Hi. Thanks for having me again. I'm a former visa officer. I was with the U.S. State Department for nearly 15 years. During that time, I served in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Iraq, France, and in Washington, D.C. I've interviewed thousands of visa applicants, and I've been working with Argo Visa now to help clients pass their visa interview.
Definitely. And Lisa, I know you mentioned several different places you've worked. Of those, which was maybe the most unique, or where you had to adjust the most, working for the U.S. government there doing visa interviews?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think Indonesia will always hold a special place in my heart because that was my very first posting. There was a lot of lessons learned. I was really able to immerse myself in the local culture, take full advantage of being there. I had a lot of, friends in the community and just seeing kind of both sides of the issue. Like on the one hand, the regulations that visa officers need to uphold, the standards they need to apply. But then on the other hand, having personal friends who would go to the visa interview and get refused because they didn't know how to present themselves to the visa officer. And then me knowing like that they had good intentions and that they were going to return to their home country. And what a shame it was to refuse that visa. So, I mean, I think that was a very formative experience for me. And yeah, I'll always love the Indonesian culture.
I love it. Yeah, that's such a unique place and part of the world. Friends, we've got several points that we're going to cover and break down the first half of this webinar. And then later on, we've got a giveaway to help you guys get a consultation. And then also we're going to do some live Q&A. So stick around. We want to answer your questions. So get those ready to drop those in the comments and we'll bring those up. And you get to ask Lisa and her experience to get your help with your situations. But first, I'd love to know where you guys watching from. I'm here in Texas. Lisa, where are you tuning in from?
I'm actually in Calgary, Canada.
Yeah, so kind of very opposite parts of here in North America, but let us know in the chat where you guys tuning in from. So we've got friends from China, welcome. Nigeria, welcome. Where are you guys tuning in from? Go ahead and tell us in the chat here. We'd love to see where you guys are tuning in from here today. All right, we're getting a little slow. That's okay. Well, as you guys are watching, please share if you feel comfortable. We'd love to see where our friends are tuning in. All right, here we go. We got a little more. We got Bangalore, India. Awesome. Welcome. And yeah, if you have questions, hang tight. We're going to get to the live Q&A later on as well. We got Delhi, India. Welcome. Connecticut, Northeast. Very cool. Beautiful part of the country in the fall. Awesome. Well, we're going to jump in because we have a lot to cover and we want to have time to do Q&A for you guys. So we just wrapped up visa student interview season, which is, kind of May, June, July, and even August as people prepare to come. Lots of student visa interviews are happening and it's been a crazy season. Lisa, how would you summarize what's been going on as we've talked with people, coached them, helped them trying to come this fall?
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster ride for anybody who's looking to study in the US this fall in terms of applying for their student visa. Not only have there been a lot of changes in rules in terms of what you need to do to demonstrate your qualifications for the visa, but there was that huge pause on all appointments for student visa applicants during the summer at a time when normally that would be peak time for students to be applying for their visa. And so then you have like this mad dash at the last minute to either get programs extended, admissions deferred, or to try to get one of those rare student visa slots. And, our mantra at Argo Visa all along has been like, if you do have, first try to apply for that visa appointment as soon as possible. And then if you're lucky enough to get that visa appointment, please, please, please be prepared for your interview, because it's not like the old days where if you were refused, maybe you could just try again. No, if you get refused, chances are, of course, depends on the country you're applying in, but in the vast majority of cases, that's going to be very difficult to get a second shot at getting that visa approval before your program start date. So yeah, it's been tough. I think, sadly, there's been a lot of shattered dreams, a lot of heartbreak this summer for prospective students, but we're here to help. And that's why we're doing, webinars like the one today.
Yeah, just talking to my friends, it seems like there's been more rejections than before. We haven't got published numbers yet, but whenever we talk to students, they say, "Oh yeah, the 5 to 10 people in front of me all got rejected." And it just seems like more rejections are happening. There's more delays. That time when they shut down the appointments for a while was killer. In that July season. And then there's also the social media rules as well, causing delays in 221Gs. And so it's been complicated. I think a lot of people who thought they were good to go had delays or refusals and weren't sure why. And so, yeah, seems like it's been a trickier few months for student visa interviews, and people are trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, at Argo Visa, we talk to students every day. As you said, there aren't published official numbers from the State Department, and there won't be until next year in terms of refusals. But just anecdotally, students that would have been easily approvable 6, 8 months ago are now getting refusals. So definitely, whereas the refusal rate was roughly 40% for students before, we anticipate next year it'll be 50% or above.
Wow, crazy times. I think one big factor that was a struggle for people was the new social media policy. Lisa, can you give us a reminder on what this policy got that was implemented this summer, and then let's talk about the impacts of that.
Yeah, so the social media policy came down during this administration. And basically, what it says is anybody who's applying for an F visa, an M visa, or a J visa, so that's people going to the US to study or on an exchange program or for a vocational program, are required to have their social media vetted before they can be approved a visa. So this is a requirement that consular officers now have to uphold when issuing a student visa. So on your DS-160, the application form asks you to list your social media handles for the last 5 years. And we do recommend that you fully disclose all of your social media handles because they're going to be found, and so trying to hide it isn't not only does it not work, but could get you into some trouble in terms of maintaining your credibility if you try to hide it. So you list all your social media handles, and now the Department of State, they are looking at your social media presence, things that you've posted, things that you've reposted, things that you've shared online, comments that you've made online, and potentially even likes or dislikes to posts. All of that information is going to be looked at before a visa officer will issue your visa. Now, the only people who, I take that back. I used to say the only people who needed to worry about this were people who are posting very controversial topics online. But now the guidance is so vague, the net has been cast so wide that I think a lot of people could be caught up in it. And basically what it says is anybody who disagrees with American policy, American culture, American values could be refused their visa. So, post with intention. Think about what you're posting before you post it. Decide if it's meaningful enough to you to potentially risk a refusal on your student visa. Ask yourself if that post is what you want to be defined by before posting. Because it's very easy now for an officer to justify refusing a visa based on something that you've written online. Anyways, even for people who are not worried, even for people like myself who just like never post online, everybody's getting caught up in this dragnet because the officers need the time to review that social media before they can issue the visa. So I think different posts are handling it differently, but generally they don't look at your social media unless they want to issue the visa, in which case they will put you into administrative processing while they do that check before issuing the visa.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely students who have had delays either because maybe they didn't have all of their social media public. And so, that put them in the 221G kind of holding position because they were finding other things online and needed to vet that, or that's even caused refusals if they found out you had other social media accounts that weren't disclosed. One of the new students I talked to said he had his visa interview, you know, got, seemed like it went well, but got the 221G because they still needed to check his social media. But then he had to wait 3 weeks before he was able to get the approval. He made it just in time for the orientation and classes to start, but he had to wait 3 weeks. Um, Someone else told me that they showed up for their visa interview appointment, but then they said, "Hey, you don't get your appointment today because we haven't had a chance to review your social media and you have to come back another time," which was also heartbreaking, because they had to travel to a different city, spend a lot of money, prepared, planned, showed up for this visa interview, and then didn't get to do it because the officers hadn't done their job of doing the social media checking beforehand. And so that was also really sad to hear. So yeah, this is making it very complicated. And so planning ahead is really important. The earlier you can do your visa interviews, I think the better.
For sure, for sure. And you can apply for your student visa up to 1 year before your program start date.
Mhm.
So, given the wait times and that there's likely going to be additional administrative processing after your visa appointment, I would go ahead and apply sooner rather than later if you plan on studying in the US for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Another new proposal that's come out in, I think, last week or two, not very long. But there's been a proposal to change the end duration of status. So before, student visas were, you're allowed this amount of time, not just to study, but also to work, OPT, optional practical training, and certain types of extensions allowed within that. But now there's proposals to shrink that. So Lisa, yeah, help us understand what this proposal is talking about.
Yeah, Rob, this just came out on Saturday night, like on a weekend. Oh, sorry. No. I'm confusing too. There's so
Mhm.
many updates, Rob. The one that
Yeah.
came out this weekend was that you have to apply in your home
Yeah.
country.
We're going to get to
This
that in just a minute.
proposal, yeah, this proposal, news of it broke a few weeks ago. It is still just a proposal. It hasn't been implemented yet, but we expect that it will be implemented. And what they're saying is, whereas before you applied for your student visa, you entered the US, and as long as you were a student, you were considered in status. And so if you wanted to go from your bachelor's degree to your master's degree to your PhD, you could do that on that visa because it was valid as long as you were still a student. The status only really ended if you were told by an immigration official, hey, you no longer qualify as a student and this visa is no longer valid. If nobody had ever said that to you, you could assume your student visa was still valid. Now they want to put a cap on that and say, okay, your visa, no matter what, is going to expire in 4 years. And it doesn't matter if it takes your program 4 years and 6 months, you're going to have to renew your student visa in order to continue studying. The proposal would also put some restrictions on being able to change your program. So if you entered the US, you start your university, after 6 months you hate it, you want to change universities, you wouldn't be able to do that on your current visa, that you would have to stay in that same program. And it also gives some maximum time allowance for things like an English program, a maximum of 2 years, whereas before you could stay and study English as long as you were enrolled full time and you were really doing that, then you could continue to stay in the US. So and still in proposal phase. We won't know until it's formally implemented all of the details. But this is another thing that is going to really increase workload for immigration officials, which in turn is going to increase wait times for students. It means that students are going to have to either finish within 4 years or contemplate how they extend their visa after 4 years.
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions, because it's like most bachelor programs take 4 years. So then that really doesn't give you a time to work afterwards. A lot of PhDs take 5 years. So, is this going to hurt PhD candidates? Master students, you might still get at least a year, a couple years, of work opportunity. Usually it's been longer though. So, yeah, a lot of question marks. Again, this is still a proposal. Who knows what's going to happen, but definitely something to keep an eye on and be aware of, because this could really, if this does get enacted to some way, it could really impact whether people are going to want to come study in America or not. So this is something worth following.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And is going to take advanced planning.
Yes, yes, indeed. And then implementation as well could be a headache. So, does it apply just to current students? Is it only upcoming, incoming students? How are they going to implement and roll it out, and who is applicable for it? So, a lot of question marks. This is something you got to keep an eye out for. Another thing that's concern, and just again to be especially aware of, is getting in trouble, arrest records, legal violations, especially in America. Things are becoming more stringent with this. So, Lisa, what's the concern here?
Yeah, I mean, as you may have seen in the press over the summer, a lot of students had their student visas revoked. And it was because they had some sort of interaction with law enforcement. And then they returned to their home country. And what we're learning is that when they go to reapply for the visa, explain the situation, behind why they had this interaction with law enforcement, they're being refused their visas, even when there's no conviction, even when charges weren't ultimately filed, even if they were found not guilty, even if the incident was relatively minor. So the important thing to know if you're a student already in the US is you must be very, very careful, not only to not get in trouble, but not go anywhere near where you could be accused of getting into trouble, because it's effectively the end to your student visa status in the US if you get arrested. Now, if you do get arrested, if your visa does get revoked and you do need to reapply for your student visa, I mean, that is a visa interview that you definitely want to be prepared for. Visa officers want, at the same time, for you to be innocent, for you to take accountability of the situation. And so this can be a really delicate balance to walk, because I think if you go in and say, well, it was totally a miscarriage of justice that I was arrested, then it could come across as if lessons weren't learned and that you might repeat those mistakes in the future. But on the other hand, you don't want to admit to crimes that you haven't committed. So you want to think very deeply about what got you into that situation in the first place. How have you grown since that incident? how can you give the officer confidence that you wouldn't find yourself in that situation again, or if you did, how you might react differently. And that's generally the best guidance we have for people who've been arrested and now have to explain themselves in a visa interview.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're currently a student in America or planning to come, make sure you talk to the university. There's a lot of resources there to figure out. Again, rules in America are very different. The laws are very different, probably from your home country. So, whether it's traffic laws, or just other things, how you do things in America, we just have more strict laws in general. And so, what might be different in your country, you have to abide by the rules and laws in America. And even sadly, we've heard, things like traffic violations, cause people to get troubles or even have their visas in jeopardy. And so being extra careful, extra caution is going to protect you to have less headaches, less troubles, or even, hopefully not have to leave the US for something silly. And so this is something just again to be really aware of and be careful about so that you don't have to worry about it. Lisa, have you had to coach anybody prepping for a visa interview who's had, arrests or legal violations?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few people,
Okay, so it's
unfortunately,
becoming more
and
common.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's yeah, definitely. And most of the people that we help, the violations are relatively minor. They were things that in the past we would have told them not to worry about because it didn't constitute an ineligibility. The
Mhm.
thing to remember is you're guilty until proven innocent in a visa interview. It's the opposite of the criminal justice system. So if you get arrested in the U.S. and because you have the presumption of innocence, maybe you're not convicted, maybe there's never a guilty finding, but unfortunately that aura of innocence doesn't follow you into your visa interview,
Yeah.
and you will have to explain yourself and demonstrate that you still qualify for the student visa, in addition to the fact that you aren't somebody who's going to get into trouble again.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like too, because there's big backlogs, a lot of wait times, visa officers are pretty slammed. If someone does have an arrest record or some legal violation, that could be a pretty quick refusal. So you have to be extra prepared to be able to talk and explain about it to have a chance for that visa interview.
And I guess just one last tip is, drinking seems to be a part of a lot of these violations. And
Okay.
although it's a really common part of the college experience that Americans can indulge in without too much consequence, oftentimes, I think it's different for foreign students. And definitely, you're going to have to be more careful and just remember your situation's a little bit different from
Mhm.
that American student sat next to you, that there's more on the line, there's more at stake, and the consequences can be more dire.
Yeah, good advice. Okay, so this is the breaking news that came out over the weekend. And people are like, "Wait, what is happening?" So yeah, what is the new requirements for people, and where can they not do visa interviews now?
Yeah. So, we've always recommended, generally speaking, people should be applying for their visa in their home country anyhow. An officer serving in your home country is going to be more comfortable issuing you a visa than somebody who doesn't work in your home country. However, now, as of Saturday, effective immediately, everybody must apply in their home country. If you're from a country that doesn't have a visa processing post, then there is now a designated post where you must go. So it used to be that, there's like, oh, there are some official posts that process Iranians, for example, and you could choose from those, or you could just go to another embassy if you wanted to take the risk of somebody, who didn't speak your language or necessarily know a lot about the Iranian situation. Now there's no choice. There's one
Mhm.
designated post, and you have to go there. For Iranians, it's Dubai, but for everybody else, it's basically the country of your nationality or the country in which you reside. And if it's the country in which you reside, you have to prove that you actually reside there before applying for your visa. So that means if you live in a country or have the nationality of a country where there are really long wait times, you're stuck with those wait times. There's no traveling abroad to go to a different embassy with shorter wait times. There's no applying at a different embassy while you're on vacation. There's no leaving the US and applying for your visa in Mexico because it's just right next door. You're going to have to travel back to your home country essentially to apply for those visas. So it's, again, for the countries that already have backlogs, this is really going to add to those backlogs. And if you are looking at either, renewing your visa abroad or applying for your visa for the first time, you no longer have the option of applying just anywhere you want.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think the purpose of this is? Any guesses on why they're implementing this specific rule to limit only your home country or residential country visa interview applications?
I mean, I think the primary reason is there is this feeling that, like, let's take India, for example, that the officer sat in India is going to be the best qualified officer to make a determination as to whether or not this Indian applicant really meets the requirements of the visa because they understand the local economy. They understand what are the good universities, what are not the good universities, what are the good professions that people come back for. So they have the cultural and economic and political context to evaluate that Indian applicant better than the officer sat in Mexico. That's the primary reason. I think there could be some secondary motivations if you want to be a cynic, that the countries that have the big backlogs have a big backlog for a reason, and the administration doesn't want people kind of shortcutting that process and getting to the US sooner rather than later. But that's just speculation on my part. From a consular officer perspective, I can tell you it's typically easier to be approved a visa in your home country, regardless of backlogs, just because the officer is going to be more comfortable saying yes to you than somebody who doesn't know much about where you're coming from. So is it the end of the world for visa applicants? No, in some cases we might actually be doing visa applicants a favor, because maybe if they'd apply to Mexico, they'd be refused, but now they'll be approved when they apply in their home country. But it is going to be significantly harder to get a visa appointment for a lot of people.
Yeah. Plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. Awesome. Well, thanks for that update. Hopefully this new news isn't too much of bad news, but again, people can, make plans accordingly. Friends, again, thanks for tuning in today. If this video has been helpful so far, hit that like button to make sure to say thanks and cheers for Lisa for hanging out with us today. We got some live Q&A coming up, so start getting your questions ready. But first, we want to know, what kind of visa are you guys pursuing? That's our chai question for you. So please tell us in the chat, in the comments, people watching the replay as well, what kind of visa are you guys going for? Is it a student visa? Maybe a tourist or travel or business visa? Is it an immigrant visa, spouse visa, transit visa? There's so many types. So yeah, let us know in the comments, what kind of visa you guys are pursuing. We've pretty much covered all these types of visas on our channel, interviewing these great visa officers like Lisa. And so if you've got specific questions on those, you can go search those videos on Shine Coaching, on Argo Visa. We got a lot of great content on YouTube, on Instagram, on social media. So please check that out. All right. So we do have some student visa viewers today. All right. We got a B2. Very cool. What else? What kind of visas are you guys going for? B1, B2. Very nice. Another B2. All right. We got a little variety today. What else? Let us know. Okay. So Lisa, a lot of crazy, a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. How can you and our friends at Argo Visa help people find clarity and be better prepared?
I mean, the great thing about Argo Visa is that we are a team of former Visa officers. And so we're constantly sharing information with each other. We're keeping each other up to date on all the late breaking news, what it means for our clients, how it might be applied, in a real world scenario at the Visa window. And so when our clients come to us, we're working with the latest information and we're helping our clients prepare for their Visa interview to the best of our ability. And that includes, discussing the requirements of the particular visa that our client is applying for, taking a look at their purpose of travel, whether it's to study or to visit or to do business, to make sure that the requirements are being met, discussing that person's situation to identify the strengths and weaknesses of their profile in terms of qualifying for the visa, in terms of how the visa officer is going to see their situation, and then developing a strategy for how they should approach their visa interview. In our 45-minute and 60-minute consultations, we also do mock interviews with our clients, which is my favorite part of the process. I think there's so much value to be gained here from doing a mock interview, because not only does it allow the client to experience what a visa interview is like, but almost more importantly, get that feedback from a former visa officer about how they're coming across. Are they demonstrating their qualification, and what more they can do to strengthen their strategy, their answers to visa questions, and their approach to the process.
I love it. Yeah. I love the great reviews that people get help with this practice to do mock interviews, to kind of debrief and figure out maybe why they were refused and come up with a better strategy. So please check that out. We've got a link where you guys can check out Argo Visa on their website and see what it's like to book a consultation. But to say thank you, we are going to do a little giveaway. So we appreciate you guys coming, hanging out with us today to learn. So we're going to do a little giveaway, and to enter, in the comments, put hashtag Visa rules. There's been a lot of rules that have been changing, so that's going to be our keyword today. So to enter, we're going to give a discount, 40% off a coaching call with an Argo Visa officer. Go ahead and put hashtag Visa rules. Let me share the screen here. Bum, bum, bum. All right, there we go. So yeah, that's what we're looking for. We'll give you guys a second here. Go ahead and put hashtag Visa rules. Each person only needs to put it one time to enter, but we'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and get entered. We'll do a drawing and see who's our lucky winner for a big coupon discount to get a coaching call with our friends at Argo Visa. So yeah, you guys are doing it right. Make sure you put hashtag Visa rules, all one word, all one phrase, no spaces, and you only need to put it one time. So we'll give you guys a few seconds to put that in. There you go. Man, just going through a lot. This is a stressful time for visa applicants. I hate it for you guys. But that's why we do these sessions, to help you out, to bring clarity, to answer your questions. Excited to do some live Q&A in just a minute. So start getting those questions ready. And we're thankful for friends like Lisa who are also able to help people out. So, all right, 10 more seconds before we figure out who our lucky winner is. Go ahead and put hashtag Visa rules if you want a chance to win the giveaway. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. All right, who do we got? Who's our lucky winner today? All right. Soleimani Diallo. Congrats. Where are you from? This is so cool. Everyone give some love. Tell Soleimani congrats in the chat. The lucky big winner. And please connect with me. Drop me an email or message me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and we'll make sure we get you your prize. So thanks for participating, everybody. Now, in our remaining 25 minutes here, we are going to do live Q&A. This is the chance to ask your questions to Lisa. So, oh, from Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa. Very cool. Well, congrats, Solomon. Again, please email me or message me online and we'll get you that information all set up. So very cool. Thanks for tuning in from Africa with us today. But yeah, rules for live Q&A. Please put your questions in the chat. Only ask it one time. If you repeat it over and over and over and over again, I'm not going to choose it. Write complete sentences, so that we can have the context. If you need to put, maybe a couple in a row with all the information, please do that. More information, the better we can answer your question. And super chats will be prioritized. So if you've got a burning question and make sure we want to pick it, you can do a super chat and we'll make sure we pick that. So we're done. Don't put visa rules anymore, Ebenezer. We're not doing that anymore. Now we're doing the live Q&A. So please go ahead and start throwing your questions in, and I'll bring them up on the screen, and we're going to get to as many as we can till there's time run out. All right, we got a good one here from Tanzil. They're asking, is there any way to expedite the administrative process? That's the 221G administrative process. So maybe Lisa, explain it and then, give us an answer.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes and no. It depends on the reason why your case is in administrative processing. 221G for administrative processing is just the visa's officer's way of saying, I'm not ready to approve your visa yet. And it can be for a whole range of reasons, from I just need you to bring in, a new passport picture or, a new photograph to, I think you might be a threat to national security and we're going to be investigating this case. So, how do you expedite a process when you don't know what you're being 221G'd for, is to just focus on the parts of the process that you can control. And that is being as clear as possible about your reason for travel to the US and about any questions on your qualifications. There's really no way to avoid administrative processing. The officer is going to do the checks that the officer feels they need to do. Security is always the first priority of any government official. And so there's no way that you're going to be able to talk an officer out of doing administrative processing if there's any element of security involved. But on the other hand, once you are in administrative processing, if you are asked for your resume, for example, then giving a nice, full, complete picture of your professional experience, your educational background, properly listing every place you've lived. The more information you give the officer, the easier it is for them to come to the determination that you do qualify for the visa. And so really that's the only thing that you can do to expedite your administrative processing. Now, there are some steps that you can take to make sure that your case is staying on track if you've been in administrative processing for a prolonged amount of time. But there isn't kind of like one general rule that I can give you without knowing why your case is in administrative processing. So if you came to Argo Visa for a consultation, for example, first thing we would do is talk about what happened at your visa interview, see what was asked of you, and then try to make an educated guess as to why you're in an administrative processing. Then we can, recommend some actions to be taken, if there are any, to make sure that your case is handled efficiently. But there's no such thing as an expedite process. There's no paying extra money to get it done quickly. There's no jumping the queue because you have a program start date. The officers are going to take that administrative processing as it comes. They're going to do what they need to do before they issue that visa. There's no rushing them.
Got it. That's great. All right. Priyansh is asking, why are students rejected after just one question? And I'll say that I've heard a lot of accounts of this lately. People messaging me saying, hey, Rob, I went for my visa interview. I got one question, and then 15 seconds later, I'm rejected. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this, Lisa?
Yeah, that's a real shame. I mean, you should be getting more than one question, but I can tell you why. There's a couple things. The first is the reality that the officer has to interview as many people as they can in a day. So if they feel like they already know whether or not you're approvable, they're going to make that decision as quickly as possible. But honestly, Priyansh, the question that you should be asking isn't, why am I being rejected after one question? The question you should be asking is, why am I being rejected after just giving one answer? The first question that the visa officer asks usually is an open-ended question, like, why do you want to study in the US? Why are you applying for a student visa? Why do you want to attend this university? And that is your single best chance to let the officer know that you have ties to your home country, that you're a credible student, and that it all makes financial sense. The three kind of critical requirements that the officer is looking for. So you need to be prepared for your visa interview, and you need to be prepared for that first question the most, because it's not about the question, it's about your answer.
Great tips. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, it's all about that first impression. The very first words that come in your mouth are going to determine whether you get more chances to prove yourself. All right. Zob is asking, they're going for a B2 visa. While submitting their documents, they mentioned an arrival date of October 10th, but haven't been able to get an appointment until later on October the 28th. Will that impact the decision? What should they know when they go for that visa interview?
I mean, it kind of depends on what you were arriving on October 10th for. I mean, if it was your program start date and now you're going to miss the start date, then yes, it's going to impact your decision. If it was for a birthday party and the birthday's party has passed, yes, it's going to impact your decision. If it was good to go to Vegas with friends and now you guys have, fixed your travel plans to start, on November 10th instead, then no, it probably won't impact the decision. The officer knows that it's really difficult to get visa appointments. They also know that you have to submit your DS-160 at the time that you make your appointment, and that if you want to change your DS-160, that you have to start the process over again. So if it's a small administrative difference on your DS-160, the officer is not going to refuse you for that reason. They want to know, are you qualified for the visa? Not, is your DS-160 perfect? But if the trip no longer makes sense, because the event has passed, then you should have either a new reason for travel to the United States or be able to explain why the trip still makes sense after the event.
Got it. That's great. Okay. Sky is asking, is there any concerns or lower approvals for O1 visas, more RFEs, or is it business as usual? O1 is a specialty work visa, a talent visa. But Lisa, do you want to explain what an RFE is and your take on this question?
Yeah, Sky is not business as usual. Definitely, we're seeing more RFEs, and definitely we're seeing more refusals in this visa category. If you are an O visa client, you definitely want to be prepared for your visa interview. So, O visa is for people who are at the top of their field, the creme de la creme of their field. And it's a petition-based visa, meaning that usually a lawyer or a petitioner has filled out a bunch of paperwork for USCIS in the United States. And USCIS, if they want more evidence that this person qualifies for the visa, they'll issue an RFE, or request for evidence. And the lawyers or the applicant have to go back, gather this information and convince the office at USCIS that the petition is approvable. Once the petition has been approved, what USCIS is saying is, hey, on paper, everything looks good to us. But the buck stops with the consular officer. As an O visa applicant, when you go into an embassy or a consulate for your O visa application or for your O visa interview, it's not an administrative stamping situation. That officer is looking at you and expecting you to demonstrate that not only that the facts of your petition match the person stood in front of them, but you do really seem like you are at the top of your field. Because if they're not impressed, they can refuse you 214B, which is the same refusal code that they can use for a tourist applicant or a student applicant. So it's quite easy, even though we can have all kinds of philosophical discussions about why it shouldn't be easy, it is quite easy for a visa officer to refuse an O visa applicant. So you definitely want to be prepared for your interview. You want to be familiar with all the information that's in your petition if it was prepared by an attorney or somebody other than yourself. You want to be able to pitch yourself in the visa interview as somebody who is reached the top of their field. You want to know your weaknesses so that you can address those questions if asked. And some typical ones these days are if you're, incredibly young, you don't have a high level of education, but you're, a superstar in the founder IT world, for example. You're not meeting those traditional benchmarks that visa officers look for. And so you need to be able to explain the new benchmarks. I think a common mistake that we see with O visa applicants is they assume a lot of knowledge on the visa officer's part, whether it's about the IT field or the business field that officers don't normally have. So highly recommend you go in prepared for your visa interview. Of course, at Argo Visa, we do a lot of O visa clients and help them through mock interviews, prepare for their visa interview. And we've seen refusals turn around and get approved after working with us.
Great. Thanks for that breakdown. All right. Our giveaway winner, Solomon, has got a good question. Having not a parent or personal point of contact in the U.S. lower chances of getting an F1 or B1, B2 visa for a person under 25 years old. So let's reframe it. For someone who's a young adult and they're going for a non-immigrant visa, student, or is it helpful or not helpful to have parents, family, personal points of contact in the U.S., and how does that impact the visa interview?
It cuts both ways. It all depends on how you present it. Because if you don't have anybody in the US, on the one hand, it could be helpful because then it's easier for you to demonstrate that all of your ties are in your home country. You don't have a support system in the US. There's no reason why you would stay in the US because, you are young and everything that you know is back home in your home country. But on the other hand, if you do have relatives in the US, it could be helpful if, for example, you're a student and it's going to help you save some money by staying with them when you attend university. It can help you meet the other requirement for a student, which is not just that you're going to return home to your home country, but that it all makes financial sense. This is why knowing what the officers are looking for and preparing how you present your information is so critical because the same information can be good or bad depending on how you characterize it.
That's great. Yeah. Pros and cons to having family relatives in the US, and it all depends on how you frame it and make it make sense to the visa officer. All right, Lisa, we got a three-part here from Omkar, so appreciate him trying to give us all the context here. So he says, I've got an upcoming visa interview, B1, B2 in September, and planning to visit US on February of next year, which is subject to my work commitments and leave approvals during that time. So how to answer in the interview for B1, B2 is specified in the D160 of specific travel plans as no, as my visit will be in 2026 and subject to work commitments and leave approvals. Should I mention my intended itinerary or just intended period of stay? So because their trip is pending on a lot of things, how specific should they be on what their plans are for this trip, I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, I mean, first let me clarify that the DS-160 is the application form that most visa applicants that are applying for a non-immigrant visa use when they go to the embassy. Everybody fills out the same form. Officers spend 5 to 10 seconds looking at this form. You want to be always honest and always accurate on the DS-160 form. That's the most important thing to know about the DS-160. Always honest, always accurate. The form itself is not what determines if you will be approved or refused, but it can set up the conversation that you're about to have in your visa interview. So it is really important. And at Argo, we have a DS-160 service separate from your consultation that you can have with a former visa officer. So there is a service whereby we will help you go line by line and make sure that your DS-160 is accurately reflecting your plans and situation and isn't going to do anything to harm you in your visa interview. In a situation where you're applying for a visa well in advance of your actual intended travel, first of all, let me say that's smart. That's what you have to do these days. You're doing the right thing, Omkar. But secondly, plan is different from, these things are set in stone and I'm committed to it. So if it's, hey, I'm going to go to Las Vegas with my friends, you can write the dates that you would like to travel. You can write the hotel that you'd like to stay in because they're plans. And when you go in for your visa interview, you can explain, hey, the trip is actually several months out. I'm waiting to get leave, but what I'm hoping to do is go to Vegas, February 15th through 20th. We'd like to stay, at ABC Hotel because we've heard great things about it. And I'm traveling with these 3 friends, assuming they can get their leave dates approved as well. What's more important than your plans in the US are your plans to return home. So that is something you want to be concrete about. We haven't bought our plane tickets yet, but no matter what, I have to be back by February 22nd because, and explain what your situation is in your home country, all the ties that you have, all the things that are bringing you back from this trip. All the reasons why you wouldn't extend, maybe, find a job while you're out there. That's what really needs to be conveyed with confidence and in a concrete manner that demonstrates to the officer that it's a real obligation, that you have real things that you need to be coming home for. That's the key.
That's great. And we've got a really good question here about what we talked about earlier in the new rule about applying in your own home. So they're asking, they've scheduled an appointment in a third country, so not their home country, for end of October. Will this impact the decision, putting in consideration the new rule? What does this person need to know? And should they change it back to their home country or go ahead with this? What's your thoughts, Lisa?
So the new rule says effective immediately for new visa appointments. So in theory, since your visa appointment's already been made, it should not impact you. But Mazanga, I strongly recommend that you contact the embassy that you're applying at and make sure that it's still okay that you apply there, because this is untested waters. I can't promise you that you'll be okay going to that embassy. But what I can tell you is the way it's worded is it's meant for future visa appointments, not visa appointments that are already made. But all the same, I would double check to be on the safe side.
Awesome. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Lisa, thank you. Give some love to Lisa in the comments for hanging out. And we broke down a lot of updates and topics on visa and immigration. Let us know what we should cover next time as we're getting back into the more frequent live sessions again. At Argo Visa and China Coaching, we've got a lot of great free resources online. And then Argo Visa has incredible coaching services if you want to figure out why you refused or how to be better prepared, do mock interview practice, which I highly recommend. And Lisa, what do you want to say to our friends as we wrap up?
Thanks for having me. It is a tough time to be a visa applicant these days, but as many stories that we see of people being refused, there are way more people that are still being approved than refused. So don't lose hope. Focus on what you can control, and that is expressing your personal situation with your own personality, being as credible and authentic as possible in your visa interview. If you have questions or doubts, if you're not sure about your strategy, get the professional help that you need to put your best foot forward.
I love it. Thanks so much, Lisa. Thanks for tuning in, friends, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.